It's the 11th of April 2019, and I have another very interesting project to show you. Here at our nursery at Herons, we continually get customers who bring trees that they wish to have remade or refurbished because they are not able to do it themselves, or they feel that we can probably do something different or do something better. So this is a very interesting tree, as you can see. It is not the usual run-of-the-mill bonsai because it has these two trunks and some very complicated and contorted branches. This person told me that there is a story behind this tree. This tree was made by him when he got married 30 years ago. And it was a present he gave to his wife, so I believe. And he's had it for the last 30 years. And all he's ever done is clip the little foliage pads at the end. So this is what the tree looks like today. It's very healthy, I must say, but the growth is a bit unusual. I never like to describe a tree as ugly or bad or indifferent because everyone has a different way of looking at what they produce. So this tree was probably produced with a lot of love and care, and he's tended it for 30 years. So he's kept it well alive, and I can't fault him for that. So I will see what we can make out of this tree. So here we are. This is the tree that Ian has brought to me. He brought it about 3 weeks ago, and ever since he left it here, I've been looking at this tree virtually every day. Every time I pass this tree, I look at it and wonder, what can I do with this tree? And I bet if you were faced with this tree, you would be in a quandary as to how to improve on it and make it more like a conventional tree. As I've already said in the introduction, I don't regard any tree as ugly, bad, or indifferent, because my philosophy in bonsai is that everyone's efforts are their own best endeavors. So what may appear to be bad to you will be to the owner of that tree their very best endeavor, so it will be their best tree. So I think there is too much snobbishness in bonsai when we say that a tree is bad or good, because beauty, after all, is very much in the eye of the beholder. Beauty is a very cultural thing. If you go to one culture, what you would regard as ugly, they would regard as beautiful. So over the years, as I've become older, I've learned to look at things in a different light. And so this is my first introduction to telling you about what I regard as nice, beautiful, or acceptable. Now, the reason why Ian has brought this tree to me is because he felt that it could be improved upon. So everything can be improved. Even the very best tree can be improved. So let us analyze how I see this tree. I was told by Ian that this tree was the front, or he regards this as the front. By the way, after 29 years, this tree has probably quadrupled or even grown more than that, 5 or 6 times the girth or diameter. when it was first grown in 1974, it was no thicker than thumb thick. And over the last 29 or 30 years, it has become progressively thicker and thicker. So I was told. And the whole story, I've just had it clarified to me by Ian, is that Ian presented this tree to his wife when they got married. So this is a very, very touching story to me. I regard this as very touching. And I saw it even more significant and touching that this tree has two trunks. So it represents a couple. And because it represents a couple, this twin trunk is a very important part of this tree. So I will try and preserve it as much as I can. If I analyze this tree, the first impression most people would get is that it is very much in the form of topiary. In Europe, if you go to many continental countries where they are very fond of making topiary, this is quite acceptable with little bunches of foliage at the tips of the branches. So this is what I would call a topiary tree. But I would not regard this as a classical oriental bonsai. Okay, also in oriental bonsai we have twin trunk trees, and this twin trunk is about the same height as the other one. So it's not a classic twin trunk, but nevertheless it is a twin trunk. Looking at the tree again, it is very flat-topped. It doesn't have a triangular shape, which most bonsai trees should have. So I need to correct that. Also, when you analyze a tree, you have to find the front of the tree or the back of the tree. The fact that it's planted in this rectangular pot like this means that Ian always regarded this as the front, and I can see why. If you look at this, this is also possible, but it's got a slight in curve there. This also shows the in curve even more. So it is what we call not a good base, not a good spreading base. If I turn the tree even more, I find that there is a bit of scar and damage here. And that makes the tree very, very interesting. So what was the side of the tree over here, I see potential here as being a possible front. So if we work with this as the front, it could be a possibility. It looks very nice. It's nice and spreading here, and the branches are evenly spread. You have two branches here, one on either side. And if we just turn it slightly, tilt it a bit, it could be made to look like this. And if I use the plastic trick or the bag trick, if we try and hide some of these branches, you could get a conical shape by doing that. Can you see it? This is the conical shape, and that's the conical shape. So that would be acceptable. So that is one possible solution. Without cutting much, we would just do that, and you would get that effect. But if you wanted the full benefit of this, I would be hiding the twin trunk, which somehow would be wrong. So I'm in a quandary. So this was a possible front which I've marked. So that is one possibility. If I want to show the two trunks as much as possible, I will have to turn the tree somewhere like that, or even come back to this side and show the two trunks, and possibly again if we hide it like that, make that conical, make that driftwood, you could get that effect, the conical effect, maybe eliminate some of those back branches and make this driftwood. So that is another possibility. But I studied this tree quite a bit, and I decided that the best solution would be to use this as the front where I can see the full beauty of the two trunks. And I can still get the conical shape. I will have to tilt the tree backwards a little more so that I appreciate the trunk much more. I will just prop it up with another piece of stone to make it more stable. So if I put the tree like this, I could get that effect without removing very much at all. The only thing that possibly needs to go is this branch, which I could make into driftwood. But this could form a nice triangular shape. So I would pot it at a slightly different angle. So, because this is clouding the front, let's begin by doing a bit of gin here and see if we can make this a little more interesting. So if you're going to make a piece of driftwood there, I will progressively take the driftwood back in case I have cut too short. So I keep coming back to the front of the tree. So let's look at, this is the front. This is the front. So after every little stage of work, I return to the tree to see whether what I've done is appropriate or not. This bit of driftwood has turned out beautiful. It's a lovely piece of driftwood with a lot of movement to it. So that's okay. I'm not sure about this one. I will think about that. Also, this limb is very, very long. I'm just wondering if I should make that a bit of driftwood to complement this. I think I could do that. It would turn out quite nice. So I'm going to do another piece of driftwood, or the gins. Now to make gins, you may have seen in some of the books that I've written, you make a partial cut pointing away. So if I want to tear the wood in the front, I make the cut at the back, and I make a sloping cut like that. Sloping cut about half or 1/3 of the way into the branch or the trunk thickness, and that should enable me to be able to tear the wood away. So here comes, I'm going to crack it and I'm going to tear it like so. So I can cut that off, and with the gin pliers I can roll that wood back. It's too late to put it back. Driftwood is usually best done on coniferous trees or evergreen trees like this. Evergreen broadleaf trees wouldn't look right. Evergreen deciduous trees wouldn't look right. If you do it to a tree like a maple, just make the hollow trunk, but don't make it white, just paint it black, because you do get trees that have had hollows in it. So we've now got this very nice 2 pieces of gin, one on either side of the tree. So coming back to the front of the tree, this is the front. So we're still seeing the 2 trunks because I want to preserve the 2 trunks as much as possible. It's still very complicated. I've got the movement there. Now I can bring that down a little bit, and I can probably see I partly cut it so I can pull it down a little bit, but the tree will still survive. That branch will still survive. That won't suffer at all. I'm using this branch splitter to split this thick branch so that I can bend it. Yes, bendable, look at it. Beautiful, it can bend. Can come down this way. Split this as well. Okay, I can see that this back one isn't doing very much, so I'm going to make a piece of driftwood out of that. So this will be made into another gin. This conifer, by the way, is Cypress Piscifera boulevard, or what we call the boulevard cypress. Very popular species that was used a lot in the 70s, right up to the early 80s, but for some reason it's no longer very popular as a species for training bonsai. And the Japanese call this Sawara cypress. We will now look at the roots and repot this tree, as it's only early April and conifers are quite safe to repot in April and even early May. It's still early spring. We will have a look at the roots, and I think I can safely repot. So let's take it out of the pot and see what is going on inside. So this was the tree originally at this angle, and we've now made this the front. But after teasing the roots and doing a bit of restyling, I think this pot is now looking too deep and too heavy for this style of tree. So if I can just ask Jack to come and lift this tree out, and I'll try another pot, a primitive pot which we use for literati trees. Although this is not really literati, it has got a bit of a literati character to it. So we put that tree in there, and I would say, if this is the front, this is going to be the front. It fits very nicely like that, and the surface roots are more visible. I think that would be a more appropriate pot. So we will proceed to pot the tree at this angle with a slight tilt like that. Okay, so we've decided on this. I'll just prepare the roots and the pot a little more. When I repot, I always put some sphagnum moss because I believe it stimulates growth more easily. This comes just from experience. And those of you who grow Satsuki azaleas will know that we always mix sphagnum moss with the Kanuma soil. So this is a trick that I've learned. When I repot, just a little tip, I always put it in a little mound like this. Because if you have a mound, you can squash it down and it fills the edges. If you leave it flat, there could be hollows that you can't fill underneath the root ball. So starting with a mound is a good little trick. And then we will just grind it down. So if Jack comes and gives me a hand, if we just put it on there. because this is a Cypress and the junipers are also part of the cypress family, I think it's okay to scrub the bark. So as with the juniper where we remove the bark, this is the old bark, I'm not removing all the bark. You will see that it's got a lovely reddish tinge underneath. So we're dealing with this in the same way we deal with the junipers. So like polishing the bark. And this should be done annually, as with the junipers. You see the lovely red color underneath. Look at that lovely red hue. I think if you just give it a year, and then this branch will assume that position. So this is what the tree looks like, and as you can see, all I have removed were the tips of 4 branches, just the tips of 4 branches. Not a great deal, but I removed it 1, 2, 3, 4, and that one was just ginned. So it's like 4.5 little ends I took off, and this now looks like an ancient parkland tree, and the aim is to grow a little more foliage along the branches here. And you can see the beautiful form of the double trunk and this lovely twisted trunk, beautiful trunk line, really beautiful trunk line. And I have the owner with me, and he is very, very pleased indeed. So I hope you enjoyed the thinking process behind the restyling of this tree, and I hope you can have a go at tackling other difficult subjects yourself. Thank you.